Welcome to another edition of our Field Notes Explainer. This is our first video in the Texas Education Savings Account Program series. We're going to walk you through this new education legislation step by step. So there is a huge shift happening in Texas education, and it's all centered around a new law called Senate Bill 2. Today we're going to discuss exactly what this new education savings account program is, who it's for, and how it's all supposed to work. You've probably heard the buzz, right? Maybe some of the debate, but what does this bill really mean for a family just trying to figure out the best path for their kids' education? Let's cut through the noise and get right to the facts. Okay, first things first, let's get on the same page about what an ESA even is. You know, the easiest way to think about it is kind of like a health savings account, but for school. This is not just a simple voucher for private school tuition. It's a state-funded account that parents get to manage, and they can use it for a whole menu of educational options. It's all about giving them more direct control. So here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with the basics. You know what this program is all about. Then, who is eligible and for how much. After that, we'll see what the money can actually be spent on. We'll also cover the really critical choice for students with disabilities, and then we'll wrap up with what's still up in the air. All right, here we go. First up, at its heart, what is this program? Let's look at the big idea behind Senate Bill 2 and when this all actually kicks off. So the clock is already ticking on this. The bill was signed back in May of 2025. But, for now, the really key date for families to circle on their calendars is the 2026-2027 school year. That's when the program officially opens its doors to qualifying families. And all the fine print, you know the rules, have to be finalized by the Texas Comptroller by May of 2026. While it's not explicitly stated in the bill, other official documents suggest that applications for families are likely to open in late fall of 2025. We've covered that in our Field Notes newsletters, so for now, we're focusing on what's specifically outlined in the legislation. The state is putting some serious money behind it to get things off the ground. We're talking $1 billion, just for the first 2 years. When you put a number like that with a B on the table, right from the start, it's a pretty clear signal that they intend for this to be a massive program right out of the gate. Okay, so that billion-dollar figure leads to the obvious next question. Who actually gets the money? This isn't just a free-for-all. The law sets up a pretty detailed priority system with different funding levels to figure out who's first in line. So what if more people want in than there's funding for? Well, there's a clear pecking order. Top priority goes to siblings of kids who are already in the program. That makes sense to keep families together. Second, kids who stayed in the ESA program without leaving for a public or charter school. Third, kids who were previously in the program but left for a public school or charter. Then, within each group, families are further sorted by household income. Okay, income tiers. These are based on federal poverty guidelines. And for reference, we're using a family of 4. Your actual number shifts up or down, depending on family size. So, here's the breakdown. In the first tier, we have kids with a disability who are from households earning under about $160,000 a year. That's 500% of the poverty line. Second in line, households under 200%, which works out to about $64,000 a year. Third are households earning between 200% and 500% of the federal poverty guidelines. Last, we have households at or above 500%. But here's the catch. Only 20% of total funds, about $200 million in this first round of the budget cycle, can go toward that last group, earning above $160,000 a year for a family of 4. And within this tier, kids who spent at least 90% of last year in a Texas public school move ahead of kids who are already in private school. It's also really important to know who is specifically not eligible. You can't be in the ESA program and also enrolled in a public school. It's an either-or situation. And, last, families have to be able to show that their child is a U.S. citizen or has been lawfully admitted to the country to be able to participate. Okay, so let's say you've qualified. The next huge question is, what can you actually do with this money? Let's check out the different funding amounts and exactly where those dollars can go. For most students in the program, the baseline amount is estimated to be somewhere between $10,000 and just under $11,000. Now, this number wasn't just pulled out of a hat. It's actually calculated to be about 85% of what a public school would normally get in state and local funding for that same student. So that's the starting number most families can expect. Now, for students with documented disabilities, meaning they are eligible for special education services, things get really interesting. There's the potential for a lot of extra funding. We're talking up to $30,000 per year. But, and this is a huge but, it's not a flat guaranteed amount. The final number is totally dependent on the specific services that are already laid out in that student's individualized education program, their IEP. The bill also carves out a specific piece of the pie for homeschoolers. These families are eligible for up to $2,000 a year in their ESA. It's a lower amount for sure, but it's designed to help cover costs for things like curriculum, textbooks, and other learning resources you'd use outside of a traditional school. And this flexibility is really at the heart of the whole ESA idea. It's not just a tuition check. The money can be used for a whole range of things, from private tutoring and educational therapies, to textbooks, transportation, even some technology. The whole point is to let families customize their kids' education to fit their specific needs. Of course, with that much flexibility, there have to be some rules, right? You can't just take cash out of the account. You can't pay your cousin to be a tutor, and vendors aren't allowed to jack up their prices just for ESA families. One really nice feature, though, is that any money you don't spend in 1 year just rolls right over to the next, unless the account is closed. Now we're getting to what might be the single most critical piece of this entire program, especially for families with children who have disabilities. Because this presents a really high-stakes choice. Do you take the extra funding, or do you keep the federal protections you already have? And right here is the absolute core of that trade-off. See, in a public school, students with disabilities are protected by a federal law called IDEA. It guarantees them a free and appropriate public education. The moment a family accepts an ESA to send their child to a private school, those specific federal protections go away. That is, unless the student returns to public school. Private schools are not legally required to provide the same level of accommodation. This really all comes down to a key principle baked into the law. Private schools can take this money and still keep their independence. What that means is that they get to decide who they admit and what services they offer, if any. They are not bound by the same disability laws as public schools. For families, this is a fundamental shift in both their rights and their responsibilities. Okay, so for our final section, let's talk about the unwritten chapter, because while this law creates the basic framework, a lot of the nitty-gritty operational details are still being figured out by the state. And yeah, there are some pretty major question marks still out there. What we do know from SB2 is that the state will be contracting with up to 5 private entities called Certified Educational Assistance Organizations, or CEAOs, to run and oversee the program. The money will flow from the state to these organizations, and they'll hold it in individual accounts for each qualified student. From there, dollars will be dispersed to pre-approved service providers, schools, and vendors once parents submit expenses. The Texas Comptroller is expected to select these providers by the end of this month, August 2025. But until that happens, and the official rules are in place, we still don't have the fine details. And beyond that, the really big long-term questions, like future funding and the ultimate effect on public schools, are still very much up in the air, which, brings us to the final big picture question. In our newsletter, we've already covered the tentative timelines for applications for vendors, service providers, and parents, based on official documents from the Texas Comptroller's office. While the precise rules won't be finalized until May 2026, applications for families and providers are slated to roll out as early as this fall. This is a huge program, and the details are coming fast. If you're considering participating in the first year, whether you're a vendor, a private or public school, or a parent, you really need to stay on top of this. We're tracking all the specifics as they become available, and we'll be sharing them. So stay with us. There's a lot more to come. So that's it for now. If you want to go deeper into special education, education policy, and parenting essentials, check out our Field Notes newsletter. We've already explored what private and public schools need to know about the ESA program, the tentative rollout timeline, and other key updates. And we've got even more useful tips and guidance headed your way. Whether you're a parent, teacher, service provider, or just curious, Field Notes is here to keep you informed and empowered. And if you need more hands-on support, here's what we offer. Education Savings Account Consulting for schools, vendors, service providers, and families. Special education and Section 504 non-attorney advocacy. Parent and family support services. And of course, our free resource, the Field Notes newsletter. Learn more at Accessible-EducationTX.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Just a quick note. Our Field Notes resources are for informational purposes only. We don't provide legal, mental health, or diagnostic services. Parents can book a free 30-minute consultation anytime on our website.